I went to watch my wife perform in a small-town play. Row E, seat 12. Proud. Supportive. Then a stranger sat beside me and started mouthing her lines, word for word. At intermission, he walked through the cast-only door. That was the moment I realized. I wasn't just here to watch a performance. I was living in one. It was a Friday night in late October, and the small-town air had that early chill that hinted winter wasn't far behind. I parked 2 blocks away from the theater, the one tucked between the bakery and the old insurance office, and walked slowly, hands in my jacket pockets, trying not to think too much. My wife, Andrea, had been rehearsing here for nearly 2 months. The show was called The Violet Window, some period drama she kept describing as deeply character-driven and emotionally raw. I never understood theater talk. I'm a high school history teacher. I deal in facts, not feelings. But I showed up because that's what husbands do. I found my seat, row E, center, and sat down just as the house lights flickered. Seat 12. The program rested neatly across my knees. Andrea's name was right there, bold as anything. Andrea Bell as Clara Whitmore. She'd been nervous all week, more than usual. Said this role was different. Said it was personal. I didn't press. The seat next to mine, seat 13, stayed empty for the first few minutes as people filled in. Coats rustled. Someone popped a mint behind me. The theater buzzed with that pre-show tension, whispers, coughs, the occasional phone being turned off. Then, right before the lights went down, a man slipped into the seat beside me. Late 30s, maybe 40. Tall, clean cut. Wore a navy coat with a wool collar and smelled faintly of cologne. He didn't say anything, just nodded a quick hello before folding his hands in his lap. I thought nothing of it. I didn't know most of Andrea's theater friends. The play began with the sound of a storm and the dim yellow of candlelight flickering on stage. It was slow, deliberate. Period dresses, long pauses, big feelings. 10 minutes in, Andrea stepped onto the stage. She looked different. Not just in costume. Not just as a character. There was a glow, a lightness to her that I hadn't seen in weeks. She wore a floor-length burgundy dress, her hair swept up in a way I'd never seen before, soft, regal, undone, and perfect. She spoke her lines with a steady confidence, her voice filling the small room like it was built for her. Next to me, the man smiled. Not just a polite smile. The kind of smile you give when you know something no one else does. I caught it out of the corner of my eye. At first, I told myself he was just into the show. Maybe he'd seen a preview. Maybe he was a fan. But then, halfway through the act, Andrea said something, a line about love and leaving and waiting by a window, and the man beside me gave a soft laugh. Not mocking. Familiar. Like he'd heard her say it before. Somewhere else. I turned my head slightly. He didn't notice me watching, or maybe he didn't care. His eyes were fixed on her. Not the scene. Not the other actors. Just her. The scene ended. The stage went dark. Applause. The next time Andrea appeared, she delivered a long monologue. A quiet one, paced and personal. She moved slowly across the stage, paused in front of the imaginary window, and stared out like she was watching something that never came. And the man? He mouthed along with her. Line for line. I froze. A cold weight settled in my stomach. This wasn't someone who'd seen the show once or twice. This wasn't someone casually involved. He knew the words, not like an actor, but like someone who'd heard them rehearsed privately. Repeated, refined. Spoken late at night in a space not meant for anyone else. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. At intermission, he stood up without a word and headed straight for the hallway marked cast only. No hesitation. No glance around. Just walked through the black door like he belonged there. He didn't come back. The second half of the show felt quieter, even though the story was reaching its emotional peak. Andrea cried on stage, collapsed in someone's arms, shouted a line that drew gasps from the crowd. I barely heard any of it. My eyes kept drifting to the empty seat beside me. After the final scene, the cast lined up on stage and bowed. The audience stood. I clapped, because that's what you do. But something inside me had already stopped. Andrea caught my eye when the lights came up. She smiled. Big. Bright. The way you do when you want someone to be proud of you. And I was. But I was also starting to wonder what else she'd been rehearsing and with who. The applause was still fading when Andrea spotted me near the lobby entrance. She weaved through a few clusters of people and threw her arms around my neck like she hadn't just poured her soul out in front of 50 strangers. You came, she said into my ear. Of course I did. My voice sounded fine, but it felt a half step behind my body, like it wasn't mine. She pulled back, smiling, cheeks flushed, eyes still shining from the high of performance. So? Be honest. What did you think? You were great, I said. You really were. And that was true. Whatever else I was feeling, it didn't take away from the fact that she'd commanded that stage. I'd never seen her look so alive. So certain. So, someone else. I was so nervous, she said, tugging her shawl tighter around her shoulders. But once I got out there, it just clicked. The room kind of disappears, you know. I nodded. But I hadn't disappeared. I had sat in row E, beside a man who mouthed her words like they belonged to him. Do you want to meet the cast? She asked, pulling at my hand. We're doing drinks at the Elm. Just something casual. I hesitated. I'll come, I said. Just need a minute. Long week. She kissed me lightly on the cheek. Okay. I'll meet you there. Sure. She bounced off, her posture light, her body still buzzing from the adrenaline. I waited until she was gone before slipping out the side door, back into the night. I didn't go to the Elm. Instead, I walked around the block and sat in my car, watching the stage door from across the street. 10 minutes passed, then 15, and then I saw him. Same coat, same perfect posture. He came out alone, not in a rush, just casually checking his phone before heading toward the bar. His face was calm, comfortable. I didn't follow him. Instead, I pulled up my browser and looked up the cast list on the theater's website. Andrea had shown it to me once, but I hadn't paid close attention. Director, stage manager, assistant director, and there, at the bottom, in a small italic font, special thanks to Mark Teller. That name meant nothing to me, but I was willing to bet that man in seat 13 knew Andrea's lines better than I did. I drove home. The house felt colder than usual when I stepped inside. I dropped my keys, sat on the couch, and stared at the dark screen of the TV for longer than I'd like to admit. Something inside me wanted to be wrong, wanted to believe it was nothing. Just theater people, just intensity that came from sharing the stage. But I couldn't shake the way she looked on stage, the way he looked at her, the way he mouthed those lines like they were secrets they shared, and the way he walked through that cast door like he'd done it before. Saturday morning, Andrea slept in. She always did after a show. I got up early, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table staring at the steam rising from my mug. Normally, I'd grade papers or read a book, but that morning, I just sat. She eventually padded into the kitchen barefoot, wearing her old college sweatshirt and the same soft, flushed smile from last night. Hey, sleepyhead, I said, forcing a tone I didn't feel. She grinned. You snuck out early. Couldn't sleep. She opened the fridge and pulled out orange juice, poured herself a glass. Last night was amazing. I still can't believe the turnout. Yeah, I said. It was packed. She sat across from me, curling her legs up in the chair like she always did. You really thought I was good? I did. You were something else up there. That part wasn't hard to say. The way she carried herself on stage, the emotion, the precision, it was Andrea, but sharper, more defined. And for the first time in a long time, I realized just how far removed I was from that version of her. You seem close with the cast, I added casually. She nodded, swirling the juice in her glass. It's a tight group. Small cast, intense rehearsals. You kind of bond fast. Who's Mark? Her eyes flicked up. Just for a second. A heartbeat. Mark Teller. I nodded slowly. He helped coach some of the scenes. Not officially part of the team, but he's friends with the director. He's done Broadway stuff, I guess. Really smart. I stirred my coffee. He seemed to know the play inside out. She hesitated. Yeah, he sat in on some of our late rehearsals. Sat next to me last night, I said. Knew your monologue by heart. Andrea blinked. He probably just saw a bunch of run-throughs. He was around a lot. It all sounded reasonable. Harmless, even. But something in her voice had changed. Just slightly. Her tone had tightened, her words more careful. Didn't see him after intermission, I said. She shrugged. He probably left early. Right. We didn't talk about it again that morning. She showered, dressed, and headed out for brunch with some of the cast. I stayed behind and watched her drive away from the front window. Her world had started feeling separate from mine. I used to know all her stories, all the names, all the little frustrations and victories. But lately, I realized I only knew what she chose to share, and even that felt filtered, edited. I pulled up my laptop and opened a blank document. Stared at it. Then, on a whim, I searched Mark Teller. There wasn't much, a couple of local articles from years back, old cast photos, a few interviews. He'd done some acting in New York, then vanished from the scene for a while. No personal details. No social media under his name. But one article mentioned him mentoring regional productions, coaching younger performers. Like Andrea. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my face. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. All I knew was there were parts of her life I no longer had access to. And someone else clearly did. It was Monday afternoon when I made the decision to stop wondering and start looking. Andrea was at a tech rehearsal, she'd said. Could go late, she'd added, with that distracted smile she always gave me when she was already halfway out the door. I kissed her cheek and watched her walk down the steps like I always did, but this time I didn't go back inside. Instead, I drove. The theater was closed to the public on Mondays, but I knew the side lot, the one with the rusted metal gate they never bothered to lock. I parked on the far end, behind a row of old shrubs, and waited. No real plan. Just instinct. Around 5:30, cars started pulling in. First a Honda I didn't recognize. Then the stage manager's Corolla. Then Andrea's little silver Civic. She got out, juggling a tote bag and her script binder, and disappeared into the side door. And then, a few minutes later, he arrived. Mark Teller. Same coat. Same walk. Like he didn't have to rush for anything. He didn't go through the main entrance. He went around the back, the way people do when they don't want to be seen. I felt my jaw tighten. There was nothing suspicious in his movement, not exactly. But it was the casual comfort of it that got me. I waited a few more minutes, then got out of the car. The theater had a small green room in the back, a cramped, makeshift lounge with a fridge, mismatched chairs, and a table usually cluttered with makeup wipes and old granola bars. I knew the building well. Andrea had given me a tour during early rehearsals, when she was still excited to share that world with me. I slipped in through the back hallway. My footsteps soft. I wasn't trying to spy, not exactly. I just needed to know. Voices echoed from the rehearsal room. Low. Calm. Laughter. I crept closer, stopping just outside the door. Through the crack in the frame, I could see them. Andrea stood center stage, facing Mark. No other cast members in sight. She was holding a prop teacup. He was talking her through a scene, one of the early ones, I remembered. She was repeating her lines, but softer, more intimate than I'd ever heard her perform them. He stepped closer, adjusted her posture gently by the elbow. Then he said, "Try it again. But this time, think about what you're not saying." Andrea nodded, closed her eyes, took a breath. And when she opened them again, something in her face shifted, not into character, but into something else. Familiar. Open. She delivered the line. Mark smiled. Not a coach's smile. Not a director's smile. Something else. He said, "Perfect." And then they stood there, just looking at each other. Not touching. Not saying anything. But it felt louder than any dialogue. I stepped back, heart pounding. My throat was dry. Whatever was happening, maybe it hadn't crossed a line. Maybe it had. But I knew that look. I knew what it meant to connect with someone like that. I'd had that with Andrea once. Now someone else did. I didn't go home right away. I sat in my car and watched as the rest of the cast trickled in. Watched as Mark disappeared from view. Watched the lights in the theater flicker behind drawn curtains. And I started thinking about how little I really knew anymore. About what went on behind those curtains. Behind the lines. Behind the marriage. By the time I got home that night, the house felt foreign. It was still our house, of course. The same couch, the same worn rug, the same crooked photo on the hallway wall that we'd been meaning to fix for over a year. But everything felt quieter. Like the air had changed somehow. Heavier. Staler. Andrea came home after 10. I heard the key turn, the soft creak of the door, the shuffle of her boots on the tile. I didn't move from the kitchen table. She walked in, eyes tired, but not in the way you get after a long day, tired in the way people look when their attention is somewhere else. "Hey," she said, dropping her bag by the door. "Sorry it went late. Lighting cues got all screwed up." I nodded. "Long night?" "Yeah." She poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the counter, sipping. "You okay?" I looked at her. She was still Andrea. Same features. Same voice. But I felt like I was looking at a photo, like there was a layer between us now. A separation that I couldn't cross, even if I tried. "I've been thinking," I said quietly. She raised her eyebrows. "Yeah." I swallowed. "About us. About how different things feel lately." Her body stiffened, just slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we don't talk the way we used to. You've been in this other world for months. The theater, the show, the cast. And I'm just here. She set her glass down. It's just a busy season. You know that. I do, I said. But it's not just that. She looked away, toward the window. Where is this coming from? I could have told her about what I saw. About Mark. About the way she looked at him on that stage like he was the only person in the room. But I didn't. Not yet. Because deep down, I already knew. I think I need some space, I said. She turned to me, surprised. Space. I'm going to stay with my brother for a while. Her eyes searched mine. Are you serious? I nodded. I need to clear my head. Figure out what this all means. She didn't argue. That was what hit hardest. She didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't even ask me not to go. She just stood there. And that silence, that cold, accepting silence, told me everything. That night, while she slept, I packed a bag. Just a duffel. A few clothes. My laptop. A toothbrush. I left a note on the kitchen table. Don't call. I'll send the paperwork soon. I didn't know if I meant divorce. I didn't know anything yet. But I knew I couldn't stay in that house another night pretending nothing was broken. I left at 5 a.m., before the sun had even touched the horizon. The streets were empty. The sky still asleep. I didn't look back at the house as I pulled away. I just drove. And for the first time in months, I could breathe. Andrea didn't notice the house was empty until late morning. She texted me at 10:13 a.m., just a single question mark. Then another message a few minutes later. Jack? Where are you? I didn't respond. I imagined her walking through the bedroom, seeing the closet half cleared. The drawers missing my socks, my watch, the charger always coiled on my nightstand. She would have gone to the kitchen next, seen the note sitting there beside the cold coffee pot. She didn't call. At least not right away. Instead, she texted again around noon. Is this a joke? Where did you go? I sat on the edge of my brother's spare bed, holding the phone in my hand, watching the messages come in without even unlocking the screen. It wasn't a joke. I wasn't coming back. At least not until I figured out how to exist beside someone who had quietly replaced me in affection, in attention, maybe even in love, without ever saying the words out loud. Around 2 p.m., the calls started. First one, then another. I silenced them. At 3:47, she finally left a voicemail. I let it go to the machine. Jack, I don't know what this is, but if you needed space, you could have just said that. You don't have to do this dramatic exit thing. Call me, please. It was the way she said dramatic that stuck with me. Like I was the one overreacting. Like disappearing quietly in the middle of the night with a single note was somehow worse than whatever had been going on between her and Mark behind my back. I didn't listen to the rest of the message. I didn't need to. That evening, my brother came home from work and found me still sitting in the guest room, same position. You okay? He asked, setting his keys on the counter. I nodded, but it wasn't convincing. Want a beer? Sure. We sat on the back porch in silence, sipping. The air smelled like wet leaves and city dust. Eventually he said, You want to talk about it? I shook my head. Not yet. He nodded. Didn't press. I don't remember what I dreamed that night. Just that I woke up at 3:12 a.m. and checked my phone. 5 more missed calls. 3 more messages. One said, If you want to end things, fine. But don't do it like this. It wasn't an apology. It was a challenge. And I was already too far gone to answer it. The next 2 days were a blur of silence, the kind that hums louder than any argument ever could. I didn't check my voicemail. I didn't open the texts. I saw them come in, lighting up the screen one by one, but I let them stack like unread pages in a book I no longer had the stomach to finish. Andrea wasn't giving up, though. Her messages turned from confused to concerned to defensive. I don't know what you think you saw. We're just friends. He helped with the play, that's all. Then they shifted. You've been distant for months. You never supported this part of me. Maybe if you'd shown up more, we wouldn't be here. That one landed hard. Because I had shown up. Maybe not to every rehearsal. Maybe not for every dinner she skipped or every Sunday she vanished to write new scenes. But I showed up to the premiere. I sat right beside the man who knew her lines better than I did, and I clapped. I stood and smiled. I never accused her of anything. I just walked out. That was what stung, I think. That I didn't fight. That I didn't play the part of the betrayed, outraged husband. I just left her with the silence, the one she'd been feeding for months without realizing it would grow teeth. By Thursday, the tone of her messages shifted again. I miss you. Please talk to me. I didn't mean to hurt you. I sat on the edge of the bed, reading those 3 in a row, and felt nothing. No anger. No longing. No desire to respond. I was drained. Later that evening, her name popped up again. This time it was a video message. I didn't want to watch it. But curiosity, or maybe habit, made me press play. It was her in our kitchen. Hair tied back, no makeup, wearing one of my old sweatshirts like she thought that would help. Her voice shook. I don't know where you are, and I don't know if you'll ever listen to this, but I need to say it. I never meant to cross a line. With Mark or anyone. I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. I felt seen again. And I let that get in the way. But I never wanted to lose you. I still don't. She paused, wiped her face. If you want to walk away, I won't stop you. But I really hope, you'll at least talk to me before you make it final. I stared at the screen after it ended. For the first time in days, I felt something stir. Not forgiveness. Not hope. Just exhaustion. Because that was the first honest thing she'd said in weeks. She hadn't meant to hurt me, but she did. She hadn't meant to cross a line, but she had. And now that I was gone, she was realizing that seen didn't always mean loved. It was a week after I left when I finally agreed to meet her. We chose neutral ground, a coffee shop near the edge of town. Not one we used to go to. I didn't want nostalgia mixing into things. I didn't want any soft lighting or familiar music trying to trick me into remembering the good parts. Andrea arrived before I did. She always hated being late. She was sitting by the window, hands wrapped around a mug, staring out at the street like she might run if I didn't come. She wore a gray coat I didn't recognize and a tired expression I did. I walked in, nodded to the barista, and sat down across from her without ordering anything. Hey, she said quietly. Hey. Silence fell between us like dust. She was the first to break it. You look tired. I am. She nodded. Me too. We sat like that for a moment, just breathing. Then she said it, not dramatically, not tearfully, just a simple truth. I messed up. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. She went on. I let someone into a part of me that should have been yours. It didn't start like that. I swear. At first it was just the usual theater bonding. You know how intense it gets. I did. But somewhere along the line, I started telling him things I should have told you. Letting him see things you used to see first. I didn't even notice it was happening until it was already too far. Did you sleep with him? She flinched, then shook her head. No. I swear. But I think if I hadn't gotten caught, if you hadn't noticed, maybe it would have gone that way. That was the worst part. The honesty. Because now I couldn't pretend it was all in my head. Couldn't write it off as jealousy or paranoia. It was real. She'd almost stepped over the line, and the only reason she didn't was because I caught her leaning. I kept telling myself you didn't care, she said. That you'd stopped seeing me a long time ago. But really, I stopped letting you see me. I wanted to feel wanted. And when Mark showed up, he just made it easy. I looked at her. You could have told me you were unhappy. She blinked hard. I didn't want to believe I was. The rest of the conversation blurred together, half apologies, half explanations. She didn't beg. She didn't blame. She just owned it. And when she finally asked, can we fix this? I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't know. I only knew one thing. Even if we tried, we wouldn't be fixing us. We'd be trying to build something new on top of something cracked. And I wasn't sure if I had that kind of strength left. 2 weeks later, I dropped the envelope in the mail. No ceremony. No final conversation. Just a plain white envelope with her name and address, sealed with the quiet weight of a decision that had taken root long before I ever walked out. Inside, the divorce papers. No message. No post-it note. No last appeal. Just the paperwork, signed and dated. Simple. Clean. It felt strange, after years together, to end it with a stamp and a signature. But that's what it had come to. Not a fight. Not a dramatic finale. Just a quiet, irreversible shift. Andrea didn't call when she received it. She texted once. I understand. I'll sign. I sat on the porch of my brother's house that evening, watching the sun drop behind the roofs of the neighboring houses, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything. She signed and returned the forms within a week. I filed them the same day. Just like that, we were no longer we. People talk about endings like they come with fireworks or tears, but ours didn't. Ours came with silence, a few documents, and a mutual understanding that whatever we once had, the real version of it, had ended months ago. I moved into a small one-bedroom across town. It wasn't much, just enough space for a bed, a desk, and a decent view of a quiet street. But it was mine. No shared furniture. No reminders. Just blank walls and clean slates. Andrea messaged me once more after the divorce was finalized. I hope someday you find someone who sees you the way I should have. I didn't respond. Not out of spite. Just because there wasn't anything left to say. I still saw her name now and then, tagged in photos from the theater, mentioned in a community blog post about local arts. Her world kept spinning. But mine? Mine was finally still. And in that stillness, something unexpected began to take root. Peace. The theater sent me a flyer 2 months after the divorce was finalized. It came in the mail with no note, no personalization, just a folded program announcing their spring season and an invitation to subscribe early. I almost tossed it in the trash. But then I opened it. Out of habit. Curiosity, maybe. Andrea wasn't listed in the cast for any of the new shows. Her name appeared once, at the bottom of the staff credits, Assistant Director, Outreach Coordinator. She'd moved behind the curtain. Maybe that was where she belonged now. Or maybe it just hurt too much to be on stage without the person who used to sit front row. I placed the flyer on the table and didn't think about it again. A week later, I went to a movie alone. First time in years. I picked a small indie film playing at the old downtown theater, the kind with creaky floors and velvet seats and popcorn that tasted like it hadn't changed since the 80s. When I got to the ticket counter, the teenager behind the glass said, "1 ticket." I nodded. 1. She slid the stub under the glass. "Enjoy. Row E, seat 12. I didn't plan it. Didn't even notice the number until I sat down. But there I was again. Same seat. Different place. Different kind of story. The previews rolled. The lights dimmed. And as the opening scene began, I looked around the theater at strangers laughing, couples leaning close, an older man scribbling notes in a small notebook. No one beside me. Just the empty seat to my right. But this time, it didn't feel like something was missing. It felt like space. Space to breathe. Space to begin again. In the weeks that followed, I settled into a rhythm. I worked. I cooked. I took long walks in the evenings. I bought a second-hand bicycle and started riding trails on Sunday mornings. I read more, not just history, but novels, poetry. I even signed up for a writing class at the community center. Not to become a writer, just to remember what it felt like to say something and be heard. That's what I'd lost, really. Not just Andrea, but that feeling of being visible, of being known. And slowly, without fanfare, I started to feel it again. One night after class, a woman named Clara, early 40s, sharp sense of humor, wore glasses that kept sliding down her nose, stopped me on the way out. "You've got a good voice," she said. "The way you read your work. Have you ever done audio narration?" I laughed. "I teach high school. I read detention slips and textbooks." She smiled. "Well, if you ever want to read something real, let me know." Turns out she ran a small podcast. Local stories, poetry, things people wrote and never thought were worth sharing. I sent her something I wrote during week 3 of the class. She recorded it. A month later, someone emailed me to say they heard it while driving home from work and cried in the parking lot. Funny what happens when you start talking again and someone listens. I don't know if I'll fall in love again. That's not the point. The point is, I remember who I am now. Not someone's seat filler. Not the quiet shadow in the audience. Not a man mouthing words someone else gave him. Just me. And that's enough.